The musicians were already in position, the tables had been dressed in gold, and Britain's most important guests were moments away from entering. Then King Charles looked toward the state entrance and saw a face he had not been warned would appear. Within seconds, the monarch raised one hand, stopped the procession, and issued an order no one inside the palace believed they would ever hear: cancel the entire dinner. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles entered the reception corridor beside Camilla with the calm expected of a sovereign. But it vanished when the final arrivals approached. A state dinner is the monarch's banquet for visiting leaders, designed to project unity and diplomatic strength. Every invited name had cleared security. Every movement had been checked. The figure at the entrance therefore felt less like a family surprise and more like a breach of royal authority. The king gripped a chair and demanded to know why his younger son stood beyond a doorway reserved for approved guests. Harry did not shout or demand entry. He remained still, with a wounded determination that made their silence more painful than any argument. Camilla watched the monarch's expression harden as he repeated the command: stop the arrivals, redirect the guests, and cancel the dinner before the Duke of Sussex could be received. William stepped closer when a security officer produced an updated access instruction. He saw Harry's name added at last beneath a royal authorization code. The royal household is the trusted network of aides managing the sovereign's duties, schedule, and official access, meaning that code could only have come from inside. Someone had not merely allowed the prince through the gates. Someone had used Charles's authority to place him there without any warning. The monarch refused to let the doors open. His anger was no longer aimed only at his son. He ordered the altered instruction traced immediately, because the cancellation now carried a darker meaning. Harry's appearance may have been arranged to provoke a public collapse, embarrass the crown, or force a confrontation before foreign guests. Beyond the doorway, he held something tightly against his chest. William noticed the sealed envelope first. The prince studied his brother's face and understood that Harry had not come to claim a place at dinner. He had come to deliver something, and whatever waited inside that envelope had frightened someone enough to manipulate palace security. The dinner had been cancelled in a single breath, but the real danger was still waiting outside the door. Sealed inside the envelope, Harry refused to surrender. Behind the titles, uniforms, and palace walls stood three men trapped by the same unresolved grief. Charles was not only a monarch defending his authority. Harry was not merely an unexpected visitor challenging protocol. And William was no longer just the heir watching from a safe distance. Each man carried a different memory of the family they had lost. And that night, every buried resentment returned at once. Charles pulled William into a side corridor before another question could reach them. The king asked whether he had known Harry was coming. His eldest son answered no, but the pause before that single word was enough. The monarch studied him closely, searching for hesitation, guilt, or some hidden attempt to reunite the family without permission. For Charles, this was not only a father's crisis. A state occasion was an official event representing the crown before foreign leaders, so any unapproved arrival threatened his authority in front of the people who depended on his control. Harry watched the departing guests from beyond the secured entrance. He quietly told a security officer that he had never wanted the dinner cancelled. The Duke of Sussex, a title given to him when he married, looked less like a man seeking attention and more like someone who had run out of private ways to be heard. Years of estrangement had taught him that letters could disappear, calls could be delayed, and promises could be buried beneath palace procedure. He believed this might be his final chance to place the envelope directly into his father's hands. Camilla remained alone after the aides left the reception chamber. She held her hands together so tightly that her fingers trembled. The queen consort understood that Harry's return could reopen old accusations about loyalty, influence, and the painful years surrounding Diana. She had spent years building stability beside Charles, yet one unexpected face at the entrance had brought every unresolved wound back into the room. When the king returned, she asked whether his son had forced his way inside. He answered that the truth appeared far more dangerous. William examined the envelope again and recognized the wax seal. The prince had seen it among private papers connected to his mother's former household, the small circle of staff who once managed Diana's personal correspondence and daily affairs. That detail changed everything. Harry was not carrying a random complaint. He had brought something deliberately tied to the woman whose loss still stood between both brothers and their father. Charles then received the security report. His younger son had not deceived anyone, crossed a restricted barrier, or used a false identity. Someone inside the palace had sent him a valid access code only hours before the dinner. The authorization carried enough royal weight to move him through the gates without challenge. Harry finally spoke through the partly open doorway. He said the person who summoned him had acted because of a promise made during a private royal ceremony months earlier. The monarch's anger faded into unease, while William looked again at the seal and realized that this night had begun long before the dinner. To understand why Harry crossed the palace threshold that night, Charles would have to return to the exact moment when a quiet family promise became a weapon. The crisis had not begun at the state entrance. It began months earlier, in a nearly empty chapel, after the cameras had gone and the royal party believed the day's tensions were over. There, beneath the weight of family history, Charles made a private promise to Harry that only 3 people heard. It was never written into palace protocol, yet one sentence from that conversation would eventually destroy an entire night of royal ceremony. Harry had remained behind after the private memorial service at St. George's Chapel, carrying a folded list he had guarded throughout the day. A memorial service is a ceremony held to honor someone who has died, and this one had drawn father and sons together through shared grief, even as years of anger kept them emotionally apart. William stood several steps away, watching his brother approach the king with the careful tension of someone expecting another wound. Charles accepted the paper but did not unfold it immediately. The list contained blocked conversations, unanswered letters, and family matters Harry believed had been deliberately buried. He asked for one guaranteed private meeting, without advisors, public statements, or carefully managed delays. The monarch listened, then gave the promise that would later return with devastating force. "When you bring me proof rather than accusations, my door will open, whatever the occasion." William reacted before his brother could answer. He warned his father that Harry would take those words literally, because desperation had already stripped away his trust in palace boundaries. The prince understood that state protocol, the strict rules controlling royal events and access, could not bend around personal pain without risking the crown's authority. Charles dismissed the fear. He insisted his younger son still knew the difference between a family promise and permission to interrupt an official occasion. Harry left the chapel believing the barrier had finally cracked. He had heard no condition beyond proof, and no warning that certain doors would remain closed. William stayed behind and told the king that compassion without clear limits could become a trap. Charles answered that refusing hope altogether would be worse. Neither man realized that someone else had listened closely enough to turn that hope into leverage. Weeks later, Harry received a documented message from an unnamed palace official confirming that the promise remained active. The instruction was direct: obtain the evidence, then come to Charles without delay. That message transformed private words into something that felt like official permission. The envelope at the dinner contained copied correspondence, showing that earlier reconciliation attempts had been redirected before reaching the king. Someone close to Charles had filtered the letters, delayed the requests, and protected the silence between them. The monarch now understood the terrifying possibility. Harry had not invented his authority to appear. Someone inside the palace had built it from the king's own words. The king had given his word as a father, but now he would have to defend his decision as a monarch, while facing the son standing only one locked door away. When the doors finally opened, there were no cameras, no applauding guests, and no ceremonial music left to protect them. Harry stepped into the private receiving room and faced the father, who had just cancelled a state dinner rather than welcome him. Charles did not offer a hand. Harry did not bow. For several unbearable seconds, the king and his son simply stared at each other, each waiting for the other to admit what had truly brought them there. Charles allowed him inside only after the last guest had been removed and the palace doors secured. A private receiving room is a smaller royal chamber used for confidential meetings away from public ceremony. And that night, it became the place where family pain collided with royal authority. William remained near the table at his father's request, caught between loyalty to the monarch and concern for the brother he had not stopped watching since the entrance. Harry placed the sealed envelope between them. "Look at me, father. I came because you told me the door would open." The king pushed it back without touching it, and said no promise gave him the right to invade a state occasion. His younger son's voice broke as he answered that every private request had been delayed, redirected, or ignored. The dinner entrance was the only place where he knew Charles would physically be present and impossible to shield behind advisors. Charles struck the table with his palm. The sharp sound ended every trace of restraint. He accused Harry of turning private grief into public humiliation and forcing foreign guests to witness the collapse of royal order. The younger man refused to retreat. He said the humiliation had begun long before that night, when every quiet path to reconciliation was closed, and every unanswered letter made him feel erased. William reached for the envelope before the argument could deepen. The prince broke the seal and unfolded copies of messages, access records, and redirected correspondence. A private office is the small group of trusted aides who handle the monarch's personal schedule and communication, which meant these documents should have reached Charles directly. They had not. Each letter had been marked, moved, and blocked before arriving at the king's desk. The future king read one authorization twice. It carried the initials of a senior household figure with direct access to the state dinner schedule and palace security arrangements. Harry watched his brother's face change, while Charles stepped closer and recognized the mark immediately. The monarch did not say the name. He folded the paper once, placed it flat on the table, and ordered William to summon that person before anyone left the palace. His anger had changed direction, and everyone in the room felt it. Harry had forced the truth into the room, but the next arrival would reveal whether Charles still controlled his own household, or whether someone else had been controlling the family all along. The cancellation looked like an impulsive act of fury, but the deeper crisis concerned power, who possessed it, who had borrowed it, and who had quietly used the king's authority without his full knowledge. As Charles studied the altered instructions, his anger became colder. Someone had not merely invited Harry. Someone had arranged a collision between father and son at the most damaging moment possible, then hidden behind the machinery of the monarchy. William read the authorization twice, before slowly removing his glasses. He told his father the document was genuine, but the calm in his voice could not hide the shock beneath it. Royal access instructions move through private secretaries, security teams, and household officials, meaning several trusted people normally check who may enter restricted spaces. For one order to pass through all those layers, someone had either held exceptional authority or known exactly how to imitate it. Charles understood the damage immediately. Canceling the dinner had prevented Harry's arrival from becoming a public confrontation before foreign guests. Yet, it had also revealed weakness inside the king's own administration. The monarch had protected the entrance, but in doing so, he had exposed something worse. His commands could be borrowed, redirected, and used against his family without his knowledge. Harry refused to accept that his invitation had been a trap. He insisted the valid access code honored the chapel promise, and proved that someone inside the palace believed his evidence deserved to reach Charles. The king saw another possibility. He feared the timing had been chosen to make his younger son look reckless, disloyal, and willing to disrupt the crown for personal revenge. Camilla entered after being summoned and stopped when she saw the copied messages spread across the table. She denied knowing anything about Harry's arrival, but resentment sharpened her words when the questions turned toward her office. The queen consort reminded them that she had spent years being blamed for every fracture in the family. Now, once again, she was being asked to defend herself before anyone had proved she was involved. William pointed to the approval code. The authorization had passed through an office connected to Camilla's household, yet the final signature had been added while she was attending an engagement outside London. That detail shifted suspicion away from her direct involvement, but pushed it toward someone trusted enough to act in her name. A private secretary then admitted in a recorded internal account that an old emergency protocol had remained active. The protocol was a backup rule, allowing urgent decisions when senior royals were unavailable, and it gave one experienced aide permission to use the Queen Consort's office code without seeking her approval each time. Charles ordered security to bring that aide before him immediately. Minutes later, the answer arrived. The official had already left through a service exit, carrying a file linked to Harry's blocked correspondence. The person who could explain everything had vanished, and before the palace could contain the breach, the consequences of the cancelled dinner began spreading far beyond its gates. By midnight, the empty dining hall had become more powerful than the banquet itself. Chairs remained perfectly aligned. Crystal glasses stood untouched. Yet outside the palace, rumors were multiplying faster than officials could deny them. The monarchy had cancelled a state occasion without explanation. Harry had been seen near the entrance, and every silence from the royal household made the truth appear darker. Inside, each family member began paying a different price. Charles rejected the first statement before the communications team finished reading it. Foreign guests had been told that an urgent internal security matter forced the cancellation, while government officials demanded a clearer answer before diplomatic embarrassment deepened. Palace communications staff are the advisors who shape official messages for the public. But no version could explain Harry's presence without exposing the stolen authorization code. The king understood that one careless sentence could turn a family crisis into proof that his own household had lost control. Camilla returned to her private sitting room and removed her state dinner jewelry, one piece at a time. She placed each item down with careful restraint, then admitted to an aide in a recorded private account that her household would be blamed whether she had known about the scheme or not. The Queen Consort had been cleared of giving direct approval, yet the code had come from her office. That alone was enough to make suspicion cling to her. Harry received a different punishment. Security informed him that he could not leave until the inquiry was complete. The irony cut deeply. After years of being kept outside, he had finally entered the palace under valid authority, only to be treated as a possible threat once the doors closed behind him. He paced the room, then asked whether anyone had questioned why someone wanted him trapped there at the exact moment the dinner collapsed. William confronted his brother before security could separate them again. The prince said the arrival had damaged their father's credibility before foreign leaders and made the crown appear unstable. Harry answered that the damage had begun much earlier, when unseen officials blocked letters and turned reconciliation into a promise that never arrived. His anger was sharp, but beneath it sat exhaustion. Security footage changed the argument. The missing aide had left through a service exit 12 minutes before Charles saw Harry at the entrance. That timing proved the collision had not been accidental. Someone had arranged the access, removed the evidence, and escaped before the king could react. William then opened the recovered draft plan. It described a controlled reconciliation meeting approved by Charles months earlier, with clear instructions for father and son to speak privately. Harry had never received it. The future king read the document twice, and his anger shifted away from his brother. For the first time that night, William stopped asking why Harry had come, and began asking who had worked so hard to keep him away. After years of accusations, interviews, statements, and carefully managed distance, the turning point came without advisors or ceremony. William entered the small room where Harry had been waiting, and closed the door behind him. No private secretary stood nearby. No security officer interrupted. For once, the brothers faced each other without the institution that had shaped every conversation between them, and without the father whose pain had made both of them afraid to speak honestly. William placed the draft reconciliation plan on the table and asked whether Harry had ever received it. The prince watched his brother read the first page, then sit down heavily and say no. A reconciliation plan is a private arrangement designed to bring divided family members together under controlled conditions, and this one had promised a direct meeting with Charles after the chapel conversation. Harry had spent months believing the promise was empty. The document proved their father had tried to honor it. Harry admitted he thought the king had deliberately ignored every request. Each unanswered letter had felt like another rejection, and each delayed response had convinced him that family no longer mattered once palace control was at risk. William answered with equal honesty. He had assumed his younger brother rejected every private offer because anger had become more important than healing. For years, both men had judged each other through statements, headlines, and palace intermediaries rather than a direct conversation. The silence between them changed. Neither apologized for everything, and neither pretended the damage had come from one missing file. Harry still carried resentment over old betrayals. William still believed his brother had exposed private pain too publicly. Yet both now understood that someone inside the household had gained power from keeping them divided. Every blocked letter deepened suspicion. Every failed meeting made reconciliation less likely. William then revealed that Charles had approved the meeting months earlier and ordered his household to arrange it after the memorial service. The future king said the written instruction carried their father's personal approval, leaving no doubt that the plan had been real. Harry opened the envelope again and removed one original handwritten note from the missing aide. The message clearly ordered staff to delay his correspondence until the family dispute became impossible to repair. That note destroyed the last excuse. The obstruction had not been an administrative error or a misunderstanding. It had been deliberate. William stood and told Harry they would enter the king's room together. He opened the door first, then stopped without crossing the threshold. The prince waited until his brother rose and stood beside him. No official would carry their words this time. No advisor would decide what their father heard. When the brothers walked toward their father side by side, the monarchy's private crisis was already becoming a public reckoning no statement could completely hide. The image that defined the night contained no argument and no royal face. It showed an untouched state table beneath glittering chandeliers, with every place setting prepared and every chair empty. Within hours, that single photograph traveled across Britain and beyond, becoming a symbol of a monarchy interrupted by its own unresolved family wounds. The palace had tried to close its doors, but the silence behind them had become impossible to contain. Broadcasters interrupted regular programming before dawn. They reported that Buckingham Palace had cancelled the state dinner after an unexpected royal family security incident, yet officials confirmed there had been no physical threat. A state dinner is the formal banquet hosted by the monarch for important foreign guests, so canceling one without a clear explanation carried diplomatic weight far beyond a private family dispute. Every unanswered question made the palace appear less secure and the crown less certain of its own story. Charles watched the coverage alone and visibly winced when one presenter called the cancellation a father's failure rather than a security decision. The king had spent the night defending royal authority, but the world now saw a parent who had stopped an entire banquet after seeing his estranged son at the door. That judgment cut deeper because it reached the one truth no official statement could erase. Harry's arrival had exposed both political weakness and personal pain. The next morning, a major newspaper placed the empty table across its entire front page beneath the headline, "The Dinner That Never Began." Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered behind the barriers. One supporter held photographs of Charles, William, and Harry together beneath the words, "Speak as a family, not through gates." That single sign captured the public mood more powerfully than any palace briefing. Opinion divided quickly. Some condemned Harry for arriving without warning and forcing a private conflict into a state occasion. Others argued that his desperate appearance proved reconciliation had been blocked from within. The Duke became either the cause of the humiliation or the victim of a system designed to keep him outside, depending on who was speaking. The palace finally issued a documented statement confirming that a senior household aide had been suspended and located for questioning. It also admitted that official access procedures had been deliberately manipulated. That revelation destroyed the idea that the evening had collapsed because of one reckless son alone. Charles then summoned William and Harry before releasing the final statement. He told them he would accept responsibility for what happened, but he would not surrender the authority of the crown. His decision would define not only the scandal, but the family's future. The world had already delivered its judgment, but the final verdict would come from the king who cancelled the dinner, and the family forced to confront why he did it. The state dinner never took place. The speeches were never delivered. The guests never returned to their seats, and the untouched table became part of royal history. Yet the cancelled celebration achieved something years of carefully arranged meetings had failed to do. It forced Charles, William, and Harry into the same room, with no prepared statements left to protect them. What began as a palace humiliation ended as a brutal act of family truth. Charles gathered William, Harry, and Camilla inside his private office after security confirmed the full betrayal. The missing aide had manipulated letters, access codes, and scheduling instructions to keep father and son divided. State protocol, the official rules governing royal events and access, had been broken by Harry's arrival, but the king admitted something equally painful. His own household had failed to honor a promise he had personally made. The monarch placed the final security report on his desk and signed an order removing the aide from royal service. He also demanded a complete review of private correspondence procedures and placed future family messages under direct oversight. No official would again decide which letters reached him. No hidden hand would be allowed to turn silence into policy. Charles then faced his younger son. He explained that the dinner had been cancelled because he felt ambushed, not because he wanted to erase Harry from the family. The king's words carried no softness, but they carried truth. Harry admitted that appearing at the entrance had been reckless. He had known the consequences, yet desperation had replaced trust after every private route seemed closed. William accepted his own part without offering easy promises. The prince confessed that years of suspicion had shaped how he judged his brother. He could not erase the interviews, accusations, or public wounds, but he agreed that future conversations would happen directly. No palace intermediary would speak for either brother again. Camilla remained composed as the findings cleared her of authorizing the access code. Still, she accepted responsibility for the weaknesses inside her household and agreed that every official connected to the manipulation must be removed. The queen consort understood that innocence did not erase accountability. The state dinner would not be rescheduled. Charles decided that repeating the celebration would make the night seem like a minor interruption when it had exposed something far deeper. The cancellation was not Harry defeating the crown, nor was it a father rejecting his son. It became the moment the monarchy finally admitted that secrecy, distance, and controlled silence had become more dangerous than confrontation. Father and sons left without an embrace, but they walked through the same door. The wounds remained. The machinery that kept them open did not. King Charles cancelled a state dinner when he saw Harry's face at the entrance. But by the end of that night, he had cancelled something far more destructive: the silence that had ruled his family for years. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.